Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for keep you waiting. I'm sorry for keep you waiting for a long time. We would like to begin.
はい、ただいまより
We would like to begin the press conference. In the beginning, the chair of the board, Mr. Kimura, will say a few words. Mr. Kimura, the floor is yours. Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 1 hour. I kept you waiting for 1 hour. Let me express my apology. I would like to spend a few minutes to make a presentation. Today, we held our board meeting, and the audit committee presented the results of the internal investigation on the serious misconduct committed by Mr. Gon and other executive. This investigation was in full swing from last October, and we spent practically 1 year on this investigation. And the results that were reported were confirmed as misconduct. And as a result of a series of misconduct, the damages incurred at Nissan was approximately 35 billion yen. 35 billion yen. The investigation report itself includes private information and highly confidential information. And because this may affect the judicial procedure, we would like to refrain from disclosing them. But at your hand, we distributed the summary, and this summary carries the details by category. So please refer to these at your leisure. And this year, in June, some of the magazines reported about the share appreciation rights, SAR. And this matter was a subject of this investigation. This will be found on the last page of the attachment. We found out that there's no illegality, but the exercise date of SAR was intentionally manipulated to increase the amount of gain, and this was possible. And as a governance issue, we take it seriously. And CEO Mr. Saikawa expressed his intention to give back the money. In operating this SAR system, intentionally manipulating the exercise date was possible. And there were aspects that did not follow the internal rules. So from fiscal year 2020, we decided to abolish this SAR system. With the result of this internal investigation, we believe that we reached a certain milestone. As a next action, based on the results of internal investigation, we will, in order to clarify the responsibilities of ex-chairman and others, we are working together with the external law firms and preparing to take necessary legal actions, including the damage claims. And at the board meeting today, under the nomination committee, we are in the serious stage of searching for the successors. And Mr. Saikawa said that we reached a certain milestone, and the company is in the stage to move on to the next step. So under the new governance system, Mr. Saikawa wants to make sure that in order to hand over the leadership to the next generation, he asked the nomination committee to accelerate the process. And from June, we transitioned to the 3 statutory committee format. And in order to enhance the governance, we have been making efforts. And now the results are out. We believe that we are reaching a big milestone for the company. Going forward, the board of directors meeting will do what we should be doing and contribute to the development and growth of the company and perform our duties. All the three committee chairs are here with us, so we are ready to answer your questions. That was all for the results of the internal investigation. Any response? There is another item that I would like to present or notify you. Do you have a hard copy?
紙ちょっといやこの木村さんに
So, as I said, if Mr. Saikawa says that he wants to make sure that we are handing over the leadership to the next generation and moving on to the next step. So, and the board is willing to enhance the governance. So, in response, we reached this conclusion. This is what I'm going to announce. CEO Mr. Saikawa, this is about his resignation. Nissan Motor Company Limited met at the regular board meeting today. And Hiroto Saikawa-san indicated recently to resign from the CEO position recently. And after the board discussion, the board asked Mr. Saikawa to step down from the CEO position, and Mr. Saikawa accepted this. And on the same day, September 16, Yasuhiro Yamauchi-san, who is COO, will be acting as CEO. With regards to the selection of the successor of CEO, the nomination committee will immediately implement the process, and by the end of October, we would like to make a decision. That's all. Thank you. These are the two pieces of report. As I said, the committee chairs are here with me, so we are ready to entertain your questions.
合わせまして、遅れて、
And I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Thank you very much. We would like to begin. Thank you.
さ
So we would like to entertain questions from the floor. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We will bring you a microphone. So please use the microphone when you are asking a question. If I may, please limit the number of questions to 2 per person. Yes, the person in the middle, please.
マイク持って
Yes, we'll bring you a microphone.
すみません、
Excuse me, I am from Kyoto Tsushin. My name is Hayata. Saikawa-san's resignation is what I would like to ask you. He will be stepping down from CEO. Is he stepping down from the presidency? Presidency. So CEO is a president. So he will step down from president? Yes, he will step down from president. And a representative executive officer.
Thank you. Régis Arnaud, Le Figaro. It was reported that Mrs. Murray has resigned or is about to resign. Do you have any comment on this or any reason why she would do so? Thank you very much.
Miss Murray left because from the initiation, no, well, not the initiation, it was the same for the June AGSM. Eventually, he had a strong intention to resign, and because he is reaching the milestone, so that's why he is going to resign. And at the same time, we, the board of directors meeting, thought that if that is his intention, if we think about the circumstances, I think it's better to resign immediately, and that's why we are reaching this conclusion.
はい。
Okay, next person. What's the next question?
ちょっと待って。はい。答えられますか。
ご質問
So your question was about Miss Christina Murray, I believe. Yes. Christina Murray, from July, she has been expressing her willingness to resign. And at that time, practically the internal investigation was almost done. So afterwards, she took a long break. And when she was leaving the company, she had to talk about the exit package with the HR department of the company, and this took time. But timing coincidentally was now.
はい。一番前の方。
Yes, next question, please. The person in the front. Person in the front, please. Thank you very much. Oshika from Asahi Shimbun newspaper. A question to Mr. Toyoda, please. Mr. Toyoda. Well, this time around, Mr. Saikawa has decided to step down. That, I believe, is the direction. I understand that he's going to step down. Well, recently, there's much talk about SAR and also issue pertaining to compensation. How has that affected his decision to resign? That's my first question. And also, my second question, aside from Mr. Saikawa, it is said that multiple executives have been allegedly involved in misconduct. What about to that point? In other words, aside from Mr. Gon and Mr. Saikawa, is there any possibility that the other executives who were suspected of being engaged in misconduct? Okay, so the first part will be responded to by Mr. Toyoda. Well, Toyoda here. Allow me to provide the explanation on this matter. Well, Mr. Saikawa, the CEO, as was mentioned by the chair of the board, has said that he would like to turn over the baton to the next person at the appropriate timing. And inclusive of the issue pertaining to SAR, internal investigation and survey has been concluded. And the trend toward the improvement of the governance has also progressed. Against that backdrop, I think we've been able to reach a certain stage. So inclusive of the SAR, with regard to, in terms of the overall general trend, I would say that we have been able to come to a certain stage. We've reached a certain stage. And so that being the case, I understand that he's decided to express his wish to step down. That is my understanding. Anything to add? Thank you very much. With regard to your question, aside from Mr. Carlos Ghosn and Mr. Greg Kelly, Mr. Saikawa, the CEO, and also former executives, did they, executive director, they were involved in adjusting the date of the execution. But with regard to the so-called ex-director, they had no intention of engaging in manipulation per se, or they had never instructed the staff to manipulate the dates or to adjust the dates. So there is no illegality there. But at the end of the day, the operation which should have been carried out by the person himself was left in the hands of others, delegated to others. And that would be in violation of the internal regulations and rules. So that being the case, the company would like to seek the return of that payment. And also the person has already expressed his willingness to return the payment. Is it just one person? Just one person? Yes, one person.
はい。じゃあ、
Yes, the person in the middle, front row, please. Mainichi Shimbun, my name is Imazawa. Well, related to the share appreciation rights, if so, the individual wasn't aware and he didn't give any such instruction. That's what you said. If so, who did it for what?
ですね。
Yes, share appreciation rights, as you may know, was introduced in 2003, if I remember correctly. And during this time, for the most of the time, they couldn't exercise the right, but coincidentally, when the SAR was about to expire, the the individual delegated operation to the secretary. So as a result, exercise date was changed. It was operational error. The date on which the operations was made was because the price was falling below the reference price. It gave a negative gap. So that is why exercise date was changed a bit. It was an administrative error. Excuse me, I don't understand what you meant. In other words, the date that was determined initially, even if exercise it, they couldn't get a gain. That's what you mean? What do you mean? You talk about Mr. Saikawa? With regards to CEO, this is shown in the result of internal investigation. With regards to the gain or bonus, as you may be aware, ex-chairman was the one who had an authority to make all the decisions, and they said that was there any more gain that can be gained. So the Mr. Greg Kelly, who used to be responsible for the secretariat, thought of different ideas, and Mr. Kelly violated the rule, but changed the exercise date. That's a reality. No, you talked about Saikawa-san. Yeah, Saikawa-san's gain in 2013, between May 14th and May 21st, was it? That's what Mr. Kelly was saying. This is not the question that I'm asking. Who? Saikawa-san wasn't aware of this? That's what you mean? Saikawa-san, according to the interview, he said that Mr. Kelly, he never asked Mr. Kelly to do that, and Mr. Saikawa, 2 months later, he received the report that Mr. Kelly did that, but he wasn't aware that the exercise date was changed. In other words, it means that when he exercised the right, I'm sure Mr. Saikawa himself was the one who signed it or emailed it, but he didn't do that. You're right. And according to what Mr. Kelly said, Mr. Saikawa, for the first time in Nissan history, Mr. Saikawa was the first one to change the exercise date. That's what he said according to Bungai Shunju magazine. Is this true?
それはちょっと言い方の問題。
It depends on how you say it, but it's not. Excuse me, you have already asked 2 questions. So next person, please, on the left. Toyo Keizai. My name is Shigishimoto. Saikawa-san is resigning. Is it because of the compensation issue? Is that the reason why she was stepped down? I believe. But so far, Mr. Saikawa was really harsh and criticizing the compensation issue of Mr. Gon. And respective of this, Mr. Saikawa himself was involved in the compensation issue, and he stepped down as a result of this reason. How do you see it as a board of directors meeting? That's my first question. And the second question. Next CEO, Yamauchi-san will be acting as CEO temporarily, I understand. The next CEO who will be selected by the end of October, is it possible that Mr. Yamauchi will be the next CEO, or you will be looking for other candidates? What's the basic policy here? SAR issue was discovered. Chronologically, these are the facts. But as I said in the beginning, Mr. Saikawa initially intended to hand over the baton to the successor. So with the interim report, and between April and June, our results were poor. And in July and August, the results are picking up, and now things are visible. So that is why Mr. Saikawa thought that we are reaching the milestone, and at the same time, we, the board, from the governance standpoint, considered many matters, and we thought that we need to do things right. I mean, this was a trigger to transition to three statutory committee format. So at the same time, we reached this conclusion.
今後のプロセス
And with regards to the next process, let me provide the information. What you meant in your question is that Yamauchi-san, you asked, well, Yamauchi-san will be acting as CEO. And will he remain official CEO? With regards to this matter, nothing is decided here. In the nomination process, since July, we started the nomination process from July, and as of July, we developed a list of 10 individuals, and we are shortening this long list. And who will be selected at the end of the day will be discussed in a swift manner at the nomination committee meeting. So we have to say that nothing is decided for now.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Next question. Sean, please.
Sorry, if I could just, one question of clarification. When do you expect the nomination process to finish and you'll come to a conclusion about who you believe should be the next CEO? And a second question, perhaps for well, anybody on the board, but what would you say to the criticism that I think a lot of us in this room are hearing, that the treatment that Saikawa has received about the suspicions around the SAR is different to how Carlos Ghosn was treated? So that the presumption of wrongdoing was perhaps a little bit more free with Saikawa than it was with Ghosn. Sort of curious to hear your response to that criticism.
Well, I think this is already referred to in the document which have been distributed to you, and this was already explained by the chair. This time around, in terms of the selection of the successor to Mr. Saikawa, with regard to the selection of the official CEO, toward the end of October, based on a very fairly quick schedule, we would like to proceed with this proceeding. So toward the end of October, there isn't much time available to us. But we believe that this will translate to improved governance. So therefore, at the nomination committee, we hope that the members of the nomination committee will have a very strong resolve in pursuing this procedure.
2点目
And with regard to your second question, with regard to the SAR, the gist of the question was that perhaps there's a difference in the treatment between Mr. Ghosn and Mr. Saikawa. This is mentioned in the special report as well. But with regard to Mr. Carlos Ghosn and Mr. Greg Kelly, with regard to the execution of the SAR, by changing the date of the execution, they were evading disclosure, or they tried to bring about more advantageous situation by changing the date. However, with regard to Mr. Saikawa, no such instruction has been provided. There was no such intention on the part of Mr. Saikawa. However, with regard to Mr. Saikawa, he left this procedure up to the hands of others when he should have done this work operation on his own. So that is the difference. Thank you.
他の方を
Anyone else? The person at the back? Yes, over there. Yes.
すいません。
Yes, Nikkei Shimbun, Okada is speaking now. On the 16th of September, you asked Mr. Saikawa to step down. External outside directors suggested to ask Mr. Saikawa to step down. This is my question. And you asked him to step down earlier. You transitioned to the three statutory committee format, but this SA, if you abandon the SAR issue of Mr. Saikawa, this will not ensure the corporate governance at Nissan, or the corporate governance at Nissan will come back to the original. That was the sense of crisis that you felt. So the outside director was the one who tried to make Mr. Saikawa resign. That's what I wanted to ask you.
これ社外
Rather than outside directors, this is the unanimous consent of the board. Needless to say, as you said, we are under the new system, so we need to make sure the governance is working. That's at the core of whatever we do, and that's a matter of course. And at the same time, we are a company, so we have to do that. We have what we have to do, and because Mr. Saikawa expressed his intention and we are doing it at this speed, I think this is what I believe that people will be convinced and agree on.
はい、ハンさん。
Hans?
はい、ありがとうございます。英語で話して
May I speak in English?
のハンスです。ありがとうございます。I'm wondering, when you look to the next CEO, the full-time official CEO, are you considering outside candidates from outside the company on your short list? And what conditions or what priorities do you have? The top 3 priorities for operational direction. What are the top 3 things you want the next CEO to achieve operationally?
Yes, thank you for your question, Hans. Yes, this is a very important question indeed. We didn't discuss it, so that's why I didn't say it. But today, after this press conference, we are going to organize a nomination committee, and at that committee meeting, I'm going to talk about this. In the previous session in July, when we had a nomination committee meeting, we developed a long list of internal candidates, and this will be shortened. And besides this long list on the internal candidates, we also search for external candidates outside the company. This was the suggestion gave at the previous meeting. So within the next 1.5 months, about 100 out of 100 candidates, this was narrowed down to a little over a dozen, 10. These are the people who have not. There are people who has nothing to do with Nissan, and there are people who used to work at Nissan. Anyhow, these are the people who are not in the company today. And out of the 100 candidates, we narrowed down into about 10 people. That's a long list that we developed, and after this press conference, we are going to hold a nomination committee where we are going to discuss on these lists. So that is why I didn't talk about it, but that was the question asked, so that is why we answered this.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
ね、はい。
Priority, sorry. Yes, that was the other half of the question. What are required from the CEO? There was a discussion on this point. Leadership, inspiring person. That's one. And this person should be able to convince many people. Generally speaking, these are the qualifications, and on top of these, the company is trying to recover the growth rather than in the growth process. So first, this person should be knowledgeable about automotive world, and not only in Japan, but around the world. This person should be knowledgeable about the automotive industry. And this person should have a deep understanding of alliance, including Renault and Mitsubishi Motors Corporation, and be deeply interested in alliance. That's what we have clarified. And going forward, we need to How to narrow down the qualifications is up to the upcoming discussions. That's all.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm with the French newspaper Les Echos. I had a question on the big audit, big investigation. You said that you think in total the misconducts goes up to 35 billion yen, if I understand correctly. And then you say it's 15 billion yen in improper expenditure, and then 20 billion yen in deferred compensation. And you say part of this total has already been paid to Gon, but I thought you didn't pay those compensation. Can you tell us how much you've been paying already out of those 20 billion yen, please?
ですね、
Thank you very much. With regard to the details of the breakdown of this amount, this relates to the judicial proceedings going forward. So I'm afraid we're not in the position to share that at this moment. But we talked about 35 billion yen earlier. Out of the 35 billion, I would say roughly a little above 10 billion has not been cashed out by Nissan. It's been deferred. And as for the others, part of that has been cashed out. That, I believe, is the understanding.
次の方。
Okay, next person, please. TV Tokyo Yotsu is speaking. Including SAR, in the overall trend, you reached a certain milestone, so Mr. Saikawa expressed his intention to step down. But why isn't Mr. Saikawa here with you today? As a top executive of Nissan, he is accountable, I believe. Why isn't he here?
この後
After this, Saikawa-san will come here to create an opportunity to speak to you. After this, he will be joining? Yes.
はい、他にございますか。
Anyone else? No?
Nippon
Hoso Hatanaka is speaking. Earlier, you said that you have a list of a little over 10 people, and amongst this, are there non-Japanese people? Or are there people who are originally from Renault in this list, to the extent that you can disclose?
もうまだプロセス
We are in the middle of the process, so I can't give you details. But what I can say that there are non-Japanese people in the list, and they are female too. In that sense, and Renault, people from Renault are included in this list as well. It's a very diverse list.
はい。
Okay.
フリーのやつ
Freelance. With regards to the result of the internal investigation, it's a fundamental question. Mr. Gon and Mr. Kelly were intentional about their misconduct, whilst with regards to SAR I'm talking about, while Mr. Saikawa and others were not doing this intentionally. And Mr. Kelly and Mr. Gon, you are not interviewing them, I believe. And without an interview with these two gentlemen, you believe that they intentionally committed the wrongdoing. And on the other hand, this was actually done by Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly did the SAR, changed the exercise date for Mr. Saikawa, Mr. Kelly or someone around them. And did you interview them? Interrogate them? Because this one person, just because he wasn't intentionally, he confirmed that it was not intentional. What were the reasoning behind it? And Mr. Kelly and Mr. Gon denies this, and yet you think that they have committed a wrongdoing. What makes you think so? What's the opinion of the audit committee on this point? And just one. Yeah, please. Please answer this question.
ゴン氏と
Mr. Gon and Mr. Kelly's wrongdoing confirmation, specifically, that will be involving the civil action going forward, so I can't give you further details. But with regards to these two gentlemen, intentionally they try to conceal them, or they try to make sure it's not shared with other relevant functions. We have email saying that. We have an evidence. That's what we mean. So Saikawa-san and others were not intentional. And how did you confirm this? How do you know it wasn't intentionally? Because we didn't discover any such email instructing to do that, and we interviewed these individuals, and this was confirmed. Well, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Saikawa didn't talk to each other. It's written in the investigation, but they had a conversation about the compensation, and Mr. Saikawa never said to use SAR. Who said so? Who said that he never said to use SAR? Only Mr. Saikawa is the one who's saying this, right? Yes, it's written here. Mr. Kelly, who was requested by Mr. Saikawa, violated the internal rule of SAR and provided the benefit. Excuse me. Please stop there. I'm sorry about this. Because you're not answering my question, so that is why I'm checking. It's not a one-on-one question and answer. I'm sorry about this, but you are not answering my question. So please ask then. Why? Why do you think that in the conversation between Mr. Kelly and Mr. Saikawa, you know that Mr. Saikawa didn't instruct us? You only heard it from one side view, right? I mean, it's really unclear. Why didn't you ask Mr. Kelly about this? Because Mr. Kelly is already arrested. So we couldn't interview him.
じゃあ次の質問に入ります。はい。
Next question.
Away from NHK. I would like to ask two questions to Mr. Kimura. With regard to the request for resignation for Mr. Saikawa, may I take it that this is de facto firing? And also, the second question, without waiting for the appointment of the successor, why did you seek immediate resignation from Mr. Saikawa? Well, Mr. Saikawa is stepping down. I think it is already on this paper. Mr. Saikawa himself has expressed his intent to resign, to step down. And in the light of the prevailing situation, we felt that immediate resignation would be appropriate. So that is why this request was put forward. That is the situation. So does that constitute firing or dismissal? He has expressed his intent to step down. And we felt that immediate action would be appropriate. And that is the situation. And what was your second question? Why is it that you have sought immediate resignation without having designated his successor? Well, in terms of the selection of the successor, this has been an ongoing process since June. So now the idea is to further expedite this situation, and we've engaged in various discussions. Some say that we should do this only after we have selected the successor, or some say that why not have an interim person. So we've had various discussions, and as a result of those discussions, considering the situation internally outside the company, and also as was mentioned earlier, we have to consider the position of the members of the board, that we decided that we should make this clear at this timing. And we believe that this would be conducive to gaining understanding from the various stakeholders. So that is the backdrop of our decision. Thank you.
この後もありますので、
We still have more, so we will take two more people who are raising their hands.
産経新聞
Sankei Shimbun Imamura is speaking now. Saikawa-san. Saikawa-san recently expressed the intent or willingness to resign. And looking in the financial announcement made, he said that he had a recovery plan until fiscal year 2022, and he said he will hand over the baton afterwards. So how do you align what he said? Immediately or recently means that from when did he express his willingness to resign? I would like to align these pieces of information. Recently, including the immediate past, so since the shareholders meeting, he has been saying this. In these circumstances, we reached this conclusion. Mr. Saikawa intended to resign, and judging on the objective circumstances, the timing was determined by the board.
はい、では最後の。
The last one, please. Asahi Shimbun, Ishikawa is speaking now. Listening to your answers to the questions, it seems like the reason for asking Mr. Saika to resign, you considered many matters to make it right, ensure good governance, do what you should be doing. Looking at the recent circumstance, this is the timing objective. So you are expressing a series of meaningless words. So please clarify for what reason you are asking Mr. Saika to step down. Otherwise, you transition to the 3 statutory committee format and you're trying to ensure strong governance. But it seems like things are going tacitly. It's like that you can interpret it in any way you like. That's a conclusion that you seem to be reaching. But can you say that the governance is working well? If you say so, please give us a reason for what makes you think so. If not, please clarify the reason why you are asking him to step down. Since Mr. Gon's issue, and as the auto industry is facing a big transformation, the question is who should be running the company. That's the point of discussion. In that sense, Saikawa-san expressed this. I think Saikawa-san should be express the intent to hand over the baton. And we see issues around Mr. Saikawa, and including inside and outside company. If you think about how much he can mobilize the people, replacing the top executive of the company will enable the company to be a leader in the auto industry.
Governance が機能
Is the governance working well? That was your question. As the board chair, Mr. Kimura said, and in addition to what he said, the results of the internal investigation were looked at and clarified and reached the conclusion by the audit committee. And with regards to SAR, for example, at the compensation committee, I think there will be a mention by the chair. The compensation scheme going forward, policy was clarified. And there was a discussion to spend more time on nomination, but at an early timing today, relatively, rather than accelerating the nomination process, we want to make the nomination process swift to determine the person to whom we should hand over the baton. So these 3 committees are starting to work. That's how I see it. Ihara-san, anything else about the compensation committee? Yes. As the compensation committee is concerned, today in the morning we held a compensation committee meeting, and at that meeting we decided to abolish the current SAR system. And in the board of directors meeting in the afternoon, this was reported and approved. To make sure you don't misunderstand, with regards to current SAR, the people who are entitled with the current SAR, including employees and corporate officers, directors, this will be exercised. But going forward, the existing SAR will no longer be granted additionally. That was resolved at the compensation committee. As been mentioned, including Toyoda-san, Special Committee on Improving Governance, since the end of last year, we have been verifying the corporate governance structure and how to improve it. And last week, finally, the internal investigation was complete. So the top executives' misconduct conduct at Nissan, and many of them were related to the top executives' compensation. So we are trying to ensure its transparency, objectivity, and rationality of the executive compensation. That's what we are trying to design.
はい、では一旦ここで終了させて。
Thank you. We would like to conclude at this juncture. And after this, Mr. Sakawa, the CEO, will be coming. Thank you very much.
どうもありがとうございます。はい、では
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, thank you for waiting. Mr. Saikawa is here, so he would like to make a comment. He will remain seated.
いいですか。はい、皆さんすみません。
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us late at night, and I will remain seated. I'm sorry about this. As you heard today at the Nissan's board meeting, I am going. It was decided that I will be stepping down from the representative executive officer's position, CEO position, as of 16th of September. While I remained a CEO, you gave us a lot of support. I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation. Since I was appointed CEO of the company, we experienced the final inspection issue and Mr. Gon's issue and the slowdown of Nissan's company. We are seeing a lot of repercussions of what we have done in the past, and I should have clarified and ironed out everything and handed over my baton to the successor. However, I couldn't finish everything, and I express my apology for stepping down while the things are yet to be done. Customers, shareholders, business partners, employees, thank you for all your strong support. I would like to express my appreciation. And in the middle of the road, before I eliminate all the bad things that were done in the past, I had to step down and apologize to you for this. Looking at the latest circumstances, as I have said at the shareholders meeting, we established a new governance system and the new board members were appointed, and we transitioned to the three statutory committee format, and this was a big milestone for us. And since then, it took a lot of time indeed. And now we completed the internal investigation, and now we are ready to move on to the next step. I think this is a big step forward. Going forward, we need to recover the company's results. But the homework that I should be doing, not all of them, but to a certain level, we were able to make it visible. Whether it's a company's result in the first quarter is at the bottom. And we are on the track to pick up. While the economic circumstances are tough, while the Nissan's performance is picking up, and I think you will see it when we announce the second quarter results. And the SAR issue, which caused a lot of concerns, this was investigated, and as a result, I decided to return the money which I shouldn't have received. Therefore, in one sense, I think we are reaching a milestone. And as I said, as soon as possible, I asked the nomination committee to accelerate the process and select the successors. At which timing should I hand over the baton? We should consider the business circumstances surrounding the company and other matters. And that's what I think. Therefore, it was a bit early, but as I said, we believe that we moved on to certain steps, so the board held a discussion and decided to ask me to resign on the 16th of September. Nissan Motor, I want Nissan Motor to be a strong company. Today, I want the successor to be selected soon and do what are left undone, which is about handing over to the next generation. That's what I expect to happen this year and next year. And the next generation of leadership will be creating the Nissan of the future, which I want to witness. And alliance with Renault is a big challenge for us. And here again, this will be handing over to the next leaders, the distinctiveness of Nissan should be maintained to reinforce the alliance. This is what I want the new leaders to step forward. And in conclusion, I would like to say that Nissan Motor is an international company that Japan takes pride in. And Nissan will be able to endure the big transformation of the auto industry and will be able to develop further. It has enough capability, talents, and technological excellence to do that. Therefore, I would like to express my appreciation to the customers and shareholders and ask for the continued support to Nissan. Thank you. That's all from me.
はい。では少し、ご質問いた。
Okay, we would like to begin. Yes, we will entertain questions. The second person, please. Nikkan Kogyo Shimbun Watanabe is speaking now. Excuse me, according to what I understand, I think you were expressing the willingness to resign in the past. And did you say something new after July? And the board asked you to resign, and at the time, Mr. Saikawa agreed immediately. What was the process by which you decided to resign? Since the event that took place last year, in terms of milestone, in the new fiscal year, fiscal year 19, and we changed some of the executive committee members, and in May at the board of directors meeting, it was decided. And we transitioned to the 3 statutory committee format. In April, May, and June, we prepared for this, and this was resolved at the shareholders' meeting. And we are under a new governance. And there were several milestones. But before that, in the beginning of April, the first milestone was organizing an extraordinary shareholders' meeting to dismiss the 2 ex-directors. And this was a start, and there were several milestones. And the alliance with Renault was awkward. And once again, we agreed to hold discussions since March. And I saw many milestones. And as I have been saying from the past, the cleaning up what has happened in the past, and resolving the relationship with Renault and recovering the company's results, taking these into account, as well as establishment of new governance structure, I thought this was my final mission to do. So in that sense, as I said at the shareholders meeting, it would have taken 1 year for our ordinary company, but in 4 months, we made these arrangements. And I said that for me, this was a big milestone. And going forward, of course, we need to recover the performance, and we need to enhance the relation with Renault and the succession plan. But at one point of time, at some milestone, I thought that I need to hand over the baton. And when should be the good timing? In fact, I personally was considering where to hand over the baton. And if early, I think it would be now, or if due to many circumstances, if I have to remain longer, I would remain longer. Timing-wise, there were different options that I had considered. The internal investigation is now complete, and the next steps, specifically speaking, it's about damage claims. So moving on, now it's visible or ready to move on to the next step. And the SAR issue that caused the concern, this was investigated as well. So this was resolved. So I think this was a big milestone. And the nomination committee, since this was created, I'm not sure how this was explained, but I asked them to expedite the process. There are different milestones. We started the process, and the personal selection process started, and this will be narrowed down to one single individual. But I asked the nomination committee to expedite the process, and this is starting. So that is why, as a milestone, I believe that even if I express my desire to step down, I don't think this will cause a big trouble on the successor or cause a big trouble on the company. So this timing was selected. As I said, there are remaining challenges to address. Company's results, from your viewpoint, in the second quarter, unless you see that the things are recovering, I think it will be a problem. And the relation with Renault will be addressed. And the succession plan. For succession plan, we have few more months to go if we do it fast. And there are different ways to address it. And this was discussed at the board. And the board concluded that at this timing, if they are going to expedite the succession planning, I thought that I am not going to cause a trouble even if I step down now. So that is why I decided to leave.
はい。他の人はい
Is there anyone else? No? Okay.
朝日新聞
Asahi Shimbun Oshima is speaking. Saikawa-san, to start with, SAR issue. I mean, why did you ask to change it in SAR?
成功日という感じに
Why are you asking this to happen in SAR? Why did you try to get the additional gain after Mr. Gon's affair was disclosed? And if you pursue Mr. Gon's misconduct, weren't you afraid that your misconduct will be disclosed? It's like a boomerang, maybe. Didn't you assume this to happen to yourself? As for the first part of your question, there are different procedures within the company, whether it's an SAR, what was it, NESS, stock option scheme. And gradually, as I was promoted, and when you get busier, I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do, but your question was a why. So following the rules, and for example, original stock option, there are dates on which you can exercise the right and you can't exercise the right. There's important terms and conditions to say, and at this timing you cannot exercise the right. And as my habit, originally the secretariat who knows the scheme best was whom I asked, and asked the secretariat to ask the operator what is the best timing. I wanted to ensure the precision of the procedure. That is why I wanted to delegate this operation to the secretariat. And that was the background behind asking this. And the second question. Last year, when the misconduct by Mr. Gon was uncovered, how did I see it? From my viewpoint, it was unbelievable. Many things were unbelievable. So first, I thought that I need to eliminate the misconduct found. Mr. Kelly, whom I asked, did something different from the rule. Irrespective of whether it was right to ask them, I asked them, and what happened later, I didn't know what happened after I asked them to. But what Mr. Kelly did it after I asked the internal investigation to do, because I asked the investigation team to investigate because I didn't know what was done. And this revealed the violation of the rule. Of course, this is nothing to be appraised of, but since last year, in November, December, intentional, it's totally different from the intentional wrongdoings that were uncovered in October, November, December.
では、
Yes, go ahead. Kanagawa Shimbun, Tasaki is speaking. There are two questions, including the checking point. Aren't you taking the consequences to step down? Are you taking a responsibility and resigning from your position? On September 16, you are going to leave, and you will completely leave Nissan? Completely leave Nissan? In other words, you will not at all be associated with Nissan after 16th of September? Whether I assume the consequences or not, as I have been saying, not only myself, but the big case which was uncovered last year, the people who are involved in the top management have a responsibility for this, and this remains unchanged. And in order to take this responsibility, that's one reason. But what I said is, in my position, in addition to this responsibility, I also had a responsibility to get Nissan out of the confusion, and there were few homework that I need to clarify because stability of the company is a priority. So I wanted to perform my responsibilities, the responsibilities that I had to hold. So there are two aspects. The responsibility about the past, of course, this responsibility is what I am taking as well as one of the reason. And what was the other one? Are you going to totally leave Nissan? For the time being, what was resolved at the board is to resign from the representative executive officer and CEO. And for the rest, it will be consulted and discussed and decided.
はい、
Yes.
読売新聞の中
Yomiuri Shimbun, Nakajima is speaking now. Saikawa-san, you are resigning, and I thought this was decided, but I think that you decided to resign in your feeling. But according to the media interview this morning, you said that there was no fact of resigning the position. It seems like, maybe, if I may, you are lying to us. Why? What was the intention behind it? You didn't say that you were going to step down this morning. Whether I had a willingness to resign or not, in one sense, I had a willingness to resign for all the time. As I said, I was wondering what will be the milestone. There are different ways to look at it. There were things that I cannot decide on my own. But my intention was to clarify things as soon as possible, including all the homework given, and hand over the baton to the next generation. With this feeling, at the shareholders meeting, I talked about it. And after the shareholders meeting, within the company in the executive committee meeting, I expressed something similar. Specifically, what do I do? Whether it should be September, October, that's what we need to. What I need to consult with others. And today, I consulted with the board members. And if the board decided we should do it fast, if we are to clarify things, for me, I haven't completed all the homework yet. So there are a lot more that I have to do. But if the board agrees, I said that I would like to settle things down now and step down. I always had a willingness of stepping down, and I was wondering what will be the timing. Having said that, in the AGSM that took place in the end of June, I gained approval of the shareholders. So I thought that, I don't know how to put it, but I shouldn't neglect or ignore or disregard the homework that that was given to me. So this was a milestone which was early among the early options. We are running out of time, so we will take two more people. Yes, the person in the middle. No, that's not the person. Yes, the person over there, please. No. TV Asahi Hiramoto is speaking. I have a question. There are two questions. With regards to the timing, in the beginning, Mr. Saikawa, you said that it was a bit early, and this was decided on September 16th. Saikawa-san, you expressed the word milestone, but the successor hasn't been selected, and it's been only 3 months since AGSM was held. So I feel that this is kind of half-baked timing. You also said that this is an early timing. Which timing was the ideal timing for you to resign? That's my question. Yes, go ahead. Okay, next person. Next question. Mr. Kelly talked to Bunge Shunju magazine, and this resulted in making you step down. It has been less than 1 year, but what's your feeling toward Mr. Gon and Mr. Kelly, who are the suspects? With regards to the timing of resignation, in the end of June, at the shareholders meeting, I gained approval to stay, and I thought there will be many milestones that I will be experiencing, and I think this was one of the fastest milestones, and the board decided on this timing. And I think there are several milestones, and needless to say, if I continue well and when the successor is selected, I can step down. That's one option. Or right before we prepare for the next fiscal year, that can be another timing. There are different milestones within the fiscal year. And this was a matter to be consulted with the board. I asked the nomination committee to expedite the selection process for the successors, and during the break, I was supporting this process. And now it's visible that as the process is accelerated, the first stage of rejuvenating the leadership will be possible. Look, I can remain for another 1 or 2 months to seize the visibility. That's another option. But it was consulted with the board, and the board decided on September 16th. Therefore, for me, SAR issue, at the same time when internal investigation was conducted, at the same time that the internal investigation reached a milestone, but it was not because of this. My investigation was complete before today, but as been explained, there were several more discoveries, so that is why we took more time to complete the investigation. So as a milestone to hand over the baton to the next generation, this was the fastest timing at which I stepped down to assume the responsibility. And the last part, how do I feel toward Mr. Gond, who is the next chairman, and Mr. Kelly, ex-representative director? With regards to what they have done, as I have been saying, I'm not going to repeat what I feel about what they have done. And the company took many actions to recover, and the new governance structure is in place, and we are making progress. And this caused a lot of concerns among the customers, and the employees had a hard time, which was unnecessary. And as a result, they this resulted in this company's situation. Of course, there are a lot of judicial procedure about the criminal investigation and damage claims, but making this company sit in this situation and causing a lot of troubles among customers and employees and shareholders, I think this is the biggest responsibility that they have done, and I think they should think about this. They should feel bad about this, but they haven't expressed any apology of creating this situation at Nissan. So I want Mr. Gon and Mr. Kelly to feel bad about the situation that they have created. Therefore, if I may, but with this, we would like to conclude the press conference. Thank you for joining us until late at night. Thank you. Thank you for all the support, and I am asking for your continued support to Nissan.